Salut tout le monde! I am back with my very first video shot in Montreal. If you've never seen any of my videos before, I've actually been making content about my life in France as an American living in France for 13 years, and we just arrived in Montreal. So this is going to be my very first video. We have been here for I don't know, a week tops. So it's gonna be about my first impressions. Obviously, it's very new, very early, but about 7 things that I found surprising or cool, that I prefer, that I dislike, the whole shebang. So if you know Montreal, if you know Quebec, if you know Canada, please let me know what you think, if you agree, if you disagree. I'll find you in the comments below. And obviously, if you have not subscribed to the channel, you know what to do right this second before we kick it off. You ready? C'est parti! Everyone tells you before you move that Montreal is very bilingual. You know, Quebec is French speaking, so of course everyone's gonna be Francophone, but at the same time, because Montreal is such a big city and there's a lot of expats, you're gonna have a lot of English too. So I wasn't surprised by this. I knew people would switch back and forth pretty easily. It is kind of surprising after hearing people speak English with a French accent that when they switch between French and English, their English accent is the same as mine, and then their French is obviously very different, but I find that to be different. But that's not really what surprised me so much. What surprised me was how many English phrases are literally translated into French. So a couple of examples in the last week have been like bon matin, like good morning, which I've never heard in France before. Or I've also heard ça fait sens, like that makes sense. And I also just recently heard je vous souhaite les meilleures de chance. Kind of like saying I wish you the best of luck. And so I feel like some of the phrases are taken from English and translated literally in French. And then in the opposite side, I was also surprised by some of the English phrases that they will translate into French, or English words that in France, they just won't translate. So perfect example was we did our first McDonald's here, and the Happy Meal was called the Joyeux Festin. And I see this a lot where there's just things that are translated that the French tend to leave in English, but in Quebec, they don't tend to leave those. You know, it's important that you're translating everything. And so there's kind of just this back and forth that I found to be pretty interesting. I'm also wondering, but I think it's too early to tell, if it's complicated to integrate in Montreal if you don't speak both French and English. When I'm listening to people on the subways or on the streets, you hear a lot of conversations of people starting in French, then switching to English, or starting in English and then dropping in French words. And I'm wondering how easily it is to function here if you don't have a grasp of English or a grasp of French, if you only speak one of the languages. So time will tell. I can't answer this one right away, but I remember when I was first learning French in France that I hadn't really felt like I had integrated or I belonged until I could understand and enjoy myself at an apéro. When you go out, like in any country, to a bar or to a club and it's loud and you can dance, it doesn't matter quite as much if you can't follow the conversations that are going on as closely. But when you're at an apéro, so you're at somebody's house, like pre-drinks, and everyone is talking and sharing the same conversation of say like 10, and you can't follow anything, like not only is it boring, but it also just kind of accentuates the fact that like you don't belong yet, you haven't integrated yet, you can't even follow a conversation yet. I found it to be a very big language win when I officially, for the first time, enjoyed myself at an apéro and felt like I had participated in the conversation and like gotten something out of it. I kind of felt like I had made it, and while I still had very far to go in my French and can still improve, it was really a milestone like in my language journey. So if you are interested in getting yourself to a conversational level in a language, or maybe even accelerating where you're at right now in your language learning journey, then you should really think about checking out the Lingoda Language Sprint. You get amazing results in just 2 months. You've got 2 types of intensive challenges, and you can choose which one you want to do. So in one challenge, you're going to take 15 classes a month for 2 months. And in the other challenge, you're going to commit to 30 classes a month for 2 months. And depending on which challenge you decide to take, you have the opportunity, as long as you take all the classes you committed to get 50% cash back or 100% cash back. So yes, technically the sprint can be completely free. thousands of students have already decided to sign up for Lingoda Language Sprint because, first of all, it's really flexible. So you have classes 24/7 whenever you want. As long as you've got an internet connection, you can take your classes from anywhere. Also, you've got really small class sizes, so you get to participate and speak up a lot, so you're learning faster. And then, of course, you get to see great results in just 2 months. If this sounds like the type of challenge that you're up for, I put everything in the description below, and I even have a discount code that gets you 20 euros off your sign-up fee. Go check it out. So taxes and tips. Guys, I've said in my videos all the time when I was living in France that I really appreciated just having everything kind of included in the price, and you just paid and you knew that someone was getting their wage and that somebody was also, taxes were included, right? So I'm not surprised that this is annoying me, but what I wasn't expecting is to just be so completely lost when it comes to taxes and tips. So for example, like this morning, I knew that when I went to go buy my croissant, that there would be taxes afterwards, like, and it wouldn't be exactly the price that was said. But then the woman behind the counter was like, okay, you ordered 5 croissants, but take a 6 croissant and then there won't be taxes. And I was like, what? Like, why isn't there taxes when I buy 6 croissants? Like, I'm totally lost over here. Or then when it comes to tipping, I'm really lost about when you tip, because it's really a necessity. Like, that person's not getting a wage, and it, like, you know, it needs, she or he needs tips to compensate like a living wage, versus like this is something extra on top that you choose or not choose, versus like no one really tips here. Because for example, we went and ate at like a really nice, I mean, it was a nice upper scale like food court in a shopping mall, but I mean, it was still a food court and it was self-service, and I walked up to the like stand and I ordered our food and I took my tray and I sat back down and I went back up to get my food. That's not normally something that I would have tipped, like, I don't know, 12 years ago, 13 years when I lived in the US, that wouldn't have been a tipping moment. And in France, no. But when I went to go pay, it asked me how much I wanted to tip the guy who took my order. And I was like, okay, but am I supposed to tip this guy? Like, he didn't really necessarily do anything I would consider worth tipping, but maybe he's not paid enough because everybody tips. Like, I had no idea and I felt really flustered. And then I started realizing that in a lot of places, they ask you when you use your card if you want to leave a tip. And I have no idea. At the boulangerie this morning, it was like, do you want a tip? I'm like, well, she got my croissant. Is that something you tip for? So I'm gonna get used to it, and I appreciate when everything is just the price that it's supposed to be, okay? I know I'll get used to it, but I wasn't surprised how flustered I would feel by not really knowing what's going on and just feeling like I'm just like tipping tons of people and I don't even know if like that's the norm. So it's, yeah, I'm a bit flustered by the whole thing. So if anybody has any comments or like helpful suggestions about that, because you know Montreal or you know how it works maybe in Canada, that would be very helpful. The metro. I was not expecting to love the metro so much here. The metro has been a dream. It's definitely not as well served as Paris, for example. Like, I mean, Paris at the metro, you can go anywhere and there's, I mean, you know what, 14 different lines and lots of stations that you can change lines. And because it's so big, it also takes sometimes a bit longer and people really use the metro. I'm not quite as sure here in Montreal because it's still considered vacation right now. Like, kids aren't back in school until tomorrow. So maybe I'll think it's more crowded. But as of right now, the metro just seems to be easy. There's 3 lines, you know exactly where you get off. When you switch, you're often on the same platform. Like, you just like really hop from one side to the other. The platforms are huge. It's really not that jam-packed. We've managed to sit every time that we've gone somewhere. And it just feels like convenient, easy. I haven't even seen like the same odors as in Paris. It's been a week though, so maybe that's not gonna be the case everywhere. But I found the metro to be like absolutely like 2 thumbs up for Montreal. So we're planning right now, we're in temporary housing and we're planning on like looking as we are right now on kind of the metro lines because we don't have a car right now. And it seems to be like very efficient to get places. Oh, also something I didn't add, there are elevators everywhere. So when you do have your stroller, it is very, very nice to always see where the elevators are or the escalators. Everyone's told me watch out for the cold, winter is rough, you really need to be like well dressed and well prepared, but nobody told me to watch out for the ice. Like, I think this is like major, and maybe we've gotten a lot of like rain or snow. Well, it must be like snow and then rain comes and then it freezes over, but it's like walking outside is like walking on an ice skating rink. We are slipping and sliding everywhere. Robin and I have not fallen yet, but Eleanor, I mean, we're always holding her hand so we catch her, but she's fallen so many times. We went and just saw a friend, like a colleague that I knew back in France who's living here, and we went to her house and she's got a pair of shoes where you press a little button and little ice picks like fly out of the soles of the shoes. And so that when she walks, she can walk on the ice, which makes me think that like it is pretty icy here and nobody told me to be careful for that. So that's really something that I was surprised about. And no one told me as well that like, be careful even when there's like the tiniest bit of snow. You can't necessarily push your stroller. If you guys had seen me on the like pushing Eleanor in her yo-yo trying to get through like even the 1 inch of snow, we like could not move. I had to like get her out of the stroller, throw it over my shoulder and just walk with her. We were a mess. Like hashtag beginner mistakes in Canada. We're making all of them. So everything here seems to be a bit like half and half, like moitié-moitié. But you don't know when you're new which moitié to which. Like some things are more like French European, but then some things are more North American, and it's not as easy to know. I was a bit surprised when I was asking somebody when something was open, and they were like, in French, they said, oh, it's open de 3h à 7h. So it was open from 3 to 7. But I knew it was during the day, like this was clearly not a club, so it's not 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. But then at the same time, they weren't saying like 15h de 19h. They weren't saying like from 1500 to 1900 because that's not, so they were using a bit of speaking French, but using more of the North American way. And I was just, a lot of times I wasn't sure. So for example, everything here is in Celsius, like the temperatures and everything, they tell you Celsius. But then at the same time, when I went to go turn on my oven yesterday to put like a frozen pizza in, the oven was in Fahrenheit. And so it's just really interesting because you're going back and forth a lot between one system and one way of doing things to another. And since I'm new, you never really know what to expect. And I don't know if that's gonna be, you know, I'll get used to it, or if you just have to kind of adapt all the time back and forth. And it makes me think that like French Canadians must be very adaptable to different situations, because you really have to potentially learn 2 very different ways to do things if you're learning both the French and then the France way, and then both the English and then maybe the more the North American way, and constantly just going back and forth. I feel like they must be very intelligent. If you know Montreal or you've heard about it, you know that they have a lot of like underground tunnels, like le souterrain. My God, you guys, I have spent the last week getting lost in those tunnels. I find them so hard as a newbie. So for example, it should take me about, like from our temporary housing right now, it takes me 20 minutes. If I could walk, I would just walk. It would be 20 minutes walk, but with the ice, as I've explained, we're not walking. And with the snow, I can't push Eleanor, so we're taking the metro. And I can use the underground tunnels to go from our metro stop normally to Eleanor's daycare. All of this from door to door should take me 20 minutes. I've tried 3 times underground tunnels, and all 3 times I've taken somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour because I get so lost. I cannot figure out where we're at. I end up basically having to tell Eleanor, who's hating me because she's walking all of this because we don't have the stroller, and saying like, listen, we just need to find a sortie, an exit, get out, get above ground, put all of our hat back on, our jackets back on, our gloves back on, and we're just gonna walk outside because I just can't handle this anymore. And every time I leave in the morning and I have like this, I say, I'm gonna do it, you know, rah, we've got this, we're gonna go underground. And every time it is a massive effing fail. So if you have tips or anybody knows, it's something that I was really excited about. Like, you know, there's this whole life underground and there'll be shops and, you know, you can do so much underground when you're in the city center, but like, I cannot figure it out. Is it just me? Like, are we a Taylor Swift over here? Like I'm the problem, it's me? Or is it not that easy and it takes a bit of time? And then finally, my last one, it's obviously only been a week, but my last one is that I feel like interactions with strangers are way smoother. Montreal is still a big city, but compared to Paris, I would say that I've already had people come up to me multiple times and ask me for directions, which that doesn't happen a lot in Paris. And I also, if I pulled out a map, people have come and asked if I need help when I'm looking at my phone and I'm clearly with Eleanor, gotten out of an underground tunnel and can't find my way still, and I'm looking at the map, someone will come and ask me if I need any help. People seem to just have less stranger danger here. You definitely see the more North American side of like smiling with strangers, and that I wasn't so surprised about, but more just like talking to people, less of this like big city mentality of I like, you know, I'm in it for myself type thing, or like whatever. I don't feel that as much here right now. Maybe that will change, maybe it won't, I don't know. But for the moment, I just, yeah, I feel like interactions with strangers are just a bit smoother. I feel way more comfortable right now going downstairs and asking anybody I meet on the street for something than I ever have in the 13 years I've been in France. All right, guys, these are my first impressions, the things that stood out to me after a week in Montreal, after growing up in the US, 13 years in France. These are kind of the stuff that I'm seeing. I can't wait to hear in the comments. I'm sure some of you guys know Montreal or have lived here, so I can't wait to hear what you guys think about everything. Don't forget, if you're interested in an intensive language challenge that is going to take you from 0 to hero, give you that big language win that you're looking for in just 2 months, check everything out. I put all of it below, including the discount code where you can get 20 euros off if you sign up for the Lingoda Language Sprint. I am really excited to be back creating content, so I will see everybody la semaine prochaine. Bisous!